Hey guys, welcome back to the Sports News Analysis YouTube channel. This is week 2 of my Q&A here, my weekly Q&A, fielding any questions you might have about the NFL, fantasy football, or the NFL draft. Had a lot better turnout this week. Got a lot of questions. I was able to answer all of them, so let's get right to it here. And the first question I got was from Albert Garcia, and he asked, who I think is going to win the NFC East. And I think if you ask me right now, I said the Dallas Cowboys. While no team in this division has been consistent, I guess their offensive side of the ball has probably been the most consistent unit in the division. I could definitely see the Redskins making a move, though. They're sort of the team I have sort of in the lurch here. We'll see how they play this weekend against the Cowboys. A big game in that divisional race this week. I think an 8-8 or a 9-7 team will win that division, though. Right now, I think it's going to be the Cowboys. Papa 3, I'm sweating, had a fantasy football question asking, should he start the Patriots defense against New Orleans or the Vikings defense against Carolina? I think without a doubt, you have to start the Vikings against Carolina. It's one of those things where it's tough to start a defense against New Orleans. I know they're on the road, but look, Drew Brees is a machine right now. You wouldn't be surprised if they put up 30 points in this game. So without a doubt, the Vikings against an inconsistent Cam Newton and Carolina offense is definitely the way to go. Heyman asked a good question about the NFL draft, and he asked about Jared Abbrederis from Wisconsin, the tall, lanky receiver. First of all, just a little bit about him for you there. He's a tall receiver, really came on the national scene this year with a 10-catch, 200-yard performance against Ohio State and most notably against Bradley Roby, their highly touted defensive back. So he's definitely on everyone's radar right now. What won't pop out with you about Abbrederis is his speed. He does not have blinding speed. He's this precise route runner, though. He has the ability to read defensive backs' body language, which is big, especially at the pro level. He's not going to be a guy that's going to wow you at the combine. So as far as where he's going to be picked in the draft, right now I would say a 3rd or 4th round pick. I mean, compare him to a guy like Eric Decker, but even a little bit of a taller version. He needs to fill out, though, as far as his muscular build goes. But if he does that and gets a little bit more physical, he's going to be one of those under the radar guys that a good team takes in the 3rd or 4th round, adds them to their arsenal, and in a couple years be a good contributor on a very good team. I think that's the kind of player he is. Maybe in New England, maybe in Denver, maybe some city like that, with a good team that understands his value. Again, 3rd or 4th round right now if you ask me what his value is. I got another fantasy football question here. 16-team league. Should I play Durham, the Detroit wide receiver, or should I drop him for Beasley or Williams from Dallas? Look, I don't think any one of those 3 are particularly a good option, but I think if you ask me the best option out of those 3, I think it's Terrence Williams. He's been coming on the last couple weeks. Big reception last week for a touchdown against the Broncos. If Calvin Johnson, though, doesn't play, Durham's value definitely increases. So I would say Durham or Williams. I would scratch Cole Beasley from that equation and go with one of those 2. Next question was from Emily Groover. Are the Saints Super Bowl contenders? And right now, Emily, I would have to say absolutely they're Super Bowl contenders. I think San Francisco, Seattle, and New Orleans are all in the same boat. Whichever 3 of those teams gets home field advantage, I think has a pretty big leg up heading into the playoffs. We'll see how this shakes out, who gets that home field, but especially New Orleans or Seattle. If one of those 2 teams gets to home field, that's a distinct advantage that I think will make them the favorite to go to the Super Bowl. Next question from Spaced Out Boy 87. Who is most to blame for the Falcons' demise this year? The players, the coaches, the GMs, or the injuries? And I'm one who normally never blames injuries, but I can't blame the GM because I think he put together a pretty solid team there in Atlanta heading into the season. The coaches, I can't blame too much. The players, I think, are playing hard. I don't fault them at that. I just think it's the injuries. Whether it's the injury to Roddy White that he's been trying to play through with his ankle, He'll miss the game this week with another injury. Whether it's the Julio Jones injury now compiling it, whether it was the injury to Steven Jackson, which is the hamstring injury, which caused him to miss a couple games here. On the offensive line, a Sam Baker and the rest of that, some other parts of that offensive line banged up. You go on the defensive side of the ball, they lose Sean Witherspoon, they lose Croy Bierman for the year. I mean, just a lot of things to have happen to a team that had a lot of continuity and a solid core, and you're seeing pieces of that core get hurt. And I also think what will save Mike Smith's job is the fact that these injuries did happen, because you can chalk this year up to almost a complete waste, and we'll move on to next year with the same solid core in place, this time, though, healthy. So definitely injuries, a little bit of snake-bitten thing going on there with the Falcons, in my opinion. MN Miracle 612 asks, who needs a bigger game for the Packers to win? Against Baltimore, the Packers offensive line or the Packers defensive line? And I would say that answer is definitely their offensive line. They played well last week in the win versus Detroit, versus that stout Detroit defensive line. But how do they handle Suggs, who's playing at an all-pro level this year, and also Elvis Dumervil coming off the edge? I think they're a little bit of a step up even from the Detroit defensive line as far as rushing the passer goes. And remember, Baltimore's playing at home. They're a lot better at home. Let's see if that offensive line can protect Aaron Rodgers this week. As far as the Packers' defensive line goes, I think they'll be fine against a Baltimore offensive line that is adequate but not great, and they haven't been running the ball well this year either. Sean Ogo, D86. He just started watching football, started watching the New York Jets last year, and he's trying to learn the ropes of football in general, okay, which we were all at that point at one time. Do you have any tips or things I should look out for as, he asked if I had any tips that he should look out for as someone new watching the NFL. And Sean, I know when I started watching the NFL, which was years ago now, to learn about the nuances of the game, what the terms mean in the game, what you're watching basically on TV. You have the advantage now of the internet. And I know this sounds basic, but watching a game, hearing terms, looking them up on the internet, I think is priceless this day and age. You say you watch the Jets. I mean, I don't think you could pick a worse team to watch starting last year. I'm a Jets fan as well. So if you're still into football after you watched the Jets last year, my friend, that's a good sign to me. It means you really like the sport. But the internet is priceless as far as looking up terms and things you may not know. But also watch NFL films for a little bit of background on the history of the game. I know, there's a lot of ways to learn the sport, but learning the rules and learning the history is a really good place to start. And NFL films is a great resource. See if you can find the history of pro football that NFL films did. Great film that really gets you up to date on the history of the NFL. Next question comes from Face Planted. Asking about Doug Martin, if I think he's a franchise running back or he'll slowly decline in his production. Look, Doug Martin right now is as close to a franchise running back outside of Adrian Peterson that I think you're going to see in the NFL. And what I mean by that is there might be other running backs better than him in the NFL besides Adrian Peterson, but he's a dual threat running the ball and catching the ball. And he's the only game in town right now in Tampa Bay. And there's very few running backs who have that situation on the team they're on now. As far as his production declining, even if he has a bad year this year, I think it's more a byproduct of the team being very bad than Doug Martin being bad. And with a rookie quarterback, probably facing a lot of 8-man fronts, he may not have the stats, but trust me, Doug Martin I think is a very good player, and eventually he'll put up the production you expect from him on a year in, year out basis. I don't see any decline in his skills, and that's usually the first thing to go, obviously, when the decline in production happens. Heyman asked me about Maurice Jones-Drew, and asking me if I think I could see the Chiefs trading for Maurice Jones-Drew. I think if he feels that Jamal Charles is being overworked, could the Chiefs trade for Maurice Jones-Drew? I would say this about trading for Maurice Jones-Drew. He's due $4.95 million guaranteed next year. It's the end of his contract. He signed a 5-year, $30 million deal in 2009. So you'd have to be willing to assume that contract. In turn, the Jaguars can't expect much for him. If you're a team in need and you want to pay him $5 million next year, which I think is going to be the holdup with this, you're going to have to probably expect him to be the main back if you're paying him almost $5 million a year. As the second back, it doesn't really make sense for the Chiefs to go out and pick him up. A team that really doesn't have a stud running back, let's say the Browns, do they want to spend $5 million to bring a guy like Maurice Jones-Drew in? Maybe they do if they know all they have to give up is a 6th or 7th round pick. You got to look for a team that expects to be good this year and next year, and Maurice Jones-Drew is going to come in and be their main back. There's not many teams that fill that need. I looked up and down everywhere in the NFL. And to find a team that's ready to win and a team that Maurice Jones-Drew would be their clear number one back, hard to find except for maybe the Browns if they're willing to take a risk. The next question comes from Smitty. Who are the 3 rookies that have impressed me so far and 3 rookies that have not impressed me? Who's impressed me? First of all, Kiko Alonso from Buffalo. 3rd round pick. Not a lot was expected of him. Already has 4 interceptions, playing a very important Mike linebacker position in that defense. He's surprised me, and it was going to turn out to be a great pick by the Bills. I think he's the defensive rookie of the year so far. Geno Smith has also impressed me so far, especially that game last week on the road in Atlanta. There haven't been many offensive rookies that have stepped to the forefront. Although he hasn't been very consistent, I like what I see from Geno, and I'm impressed by the way he's played, and he's exceeded some of the expectations I've had for him early on. Also impressed with Star Lotulelei. I think teams are going to regret not taking him in the top 10. You look at a guy like Star Lotulelei at 14 and Sheldon Richardson at pick 13. I mean, those 2 guys have been great this year and probably warranted top 10 selections. And instead of taking those guys, you saw teams go very offensive line heavy. And 2 of my guys that have not impressed me come from the offensive line and were picked in the top 10. The first one of those is the 1st round pick, Eric Fisher. On a team the Chiefs have had a lot of bright spots, he does not seem to be one of them right now, struggling in both the pass and run blocking departments. And also Chance Warmack. You knew he was a road grader in the run game, which he's been pretty good at. But he's been very susceptible to the pass rush in the NFL due to his feet just not being that quick. I didn't think it would be this big of a problem for him, but it seems to be early on for the Titans. And my last one is disappointing. My last disappointing rookie is Tavon Austin. I don't think this is all his fault. I think trading up to 8 to get him was not a wise move by the Rams, but they do it, and then they don't even involve him early on and often in their offensive game plans. Doesn't seem to make much sense to me. But that's what you get when you get a Brian Schottenheimer offense, very inconsistent play calling, and I think Tavon Austin and his production have suffered because of it. Billy Keds asks, will the Jets be playoff contenders this year or next year? This year, I have a problem thinking they could be a playoff contender because I look at the landscape of the AFC. Okay, I think they will. If you consider a playoff contender a team that's still in it, the last quarter of the season from a technical perspective, I think yes. I think the Jets can win 8, maybe the most 9 games this year if everything falls right, because they have a very tough schedule coming up here in the next 3 or 4 games. Next year, look, if Geno can be consistent, if they can get some playmakers on offense, I see no reason why they can't be playoff contenders next year with that solid defense already in place and Geno with some more playmakers on the outside to help him in his development. They took the playmakers away from Sanchez. Hopefully they give them to Geno Smith. Vizio asks, who are my 6 playoff contenders in the AFC and who will win the AFC North? First of all, I think Cincinnati wins the AFC North. I think the Browns are going to drop off here with Brandon Weeden at quarterback. And I think the Ravens are just a little too inconsistent on offense, more inconsistent than Cincinnati. And I really like that Cincinnati defensive line and that defense as a whole. I think in the end, they win the division. Right now, my playoffs in the AFC consist of the 4 division winners being the Patriots, the Bengals, the Broncos, and the Colts, and the wild cards being the Chiefs and the Ravens. I think the Ravens get in because I don't like the way the Texans' schedule looks. I think the Dolphins are going to – I think that game they lost to the Ravens is going to kill them eventually in tiebreakers. So I like the Ravens there. Second to last question here. Third to last, sorry. Kay Schillings asks, how good of an option is Ruben Randall at the flex position? Is his play sustainable? And I would say this. Right now, he had 90 more yards receiving last night, by the way. Right now, the way their offense is, if they're always playing from behind, yes, in a 12-team league, a deeper league as a flex option, he may be a viable player. In a 10-team league with a flex option, I'm not sure about that. But if you're in a very deep league where you flex one guy and you have 12 teams and it's a pretty good league, I think he is a viable flex option depending on his matchup. Brady Lund asks, an NFL team in London, would I support the idea? I don't support the idea only because I don't know how much that country embraces football. I know they sell out. You know, they're going to sell out the 2 games they have this year. But to sell out 8 games and to sell the preseason games presumably, I don't know if the dedication is there yet from the people of England to have their own franchise. I know there's a section of very devoted football fans there, but they probably have their own teams. If I'm a Dolphins fan and I live in England, or I'm a Ravens fan and I live in England, and some random team gets transplanted there, why am I going to go to the game just because it's an NFL game? I don't really see that happening. And as far as free agents not wanting to go to London, look, London's a beautiful city. If they get offered the most money to go play in London, they'll go play in London. It's a job when it comes down to it. So I don't buy that. I get players if they have a choice not going there, but if the money's good there, I think they'll go. I don't think that would be a problem long term, but I'm not in support of it. I think it's America's game. I think we should keep it here. The last question I got here just came in towards the end here. 2 last questions here. One of them was asked me to compare David Fales to Aaron Murray. Look, in Aaron Murray, you get a guy who's not prototypical size, not prototypical height, not prototypical arm strength, but has played against very tough competition, has come up clutch against that competition, and I think that will serve him well and his draft stock well. He's not going to wow you at the combine, but you can't argue against the competition he's played and how well he's played against it in his years at Georgia. Very seasoned guy. David Fales, on the other hand, hasn't played the quality competition, but from a measurable standpoint, has the arm strength, has the size that pro coaches salivate over. So I'll do more in-depth profiles on these guys as we get closer towards the draft. But in general, that's what you're going to see play out with these 2 quarterbacks that are probably in the 3 to 6 area as far as the ranking of quarterbacks go. And the last question I got here, Jacob Morris asked, should he play Deshaun Jackson, who's playing against Tampa Bay, and presumably Darrelle Revis, or Josh Gordon, but he has Whedon as his quarterback? I will go with Josh Gordon this week over Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson doesn't have good numbers against Revis in his career. I think Josh Gordon is almost a one-man band down there, along with Jordan Cameron in Cleveland. Look for Whedon if he does get on track to be hitting Josh Gordon with those passes. And guys, that concludes the Week 6 question and answer session. I was real happy I was able to get to everyone's questions. Thanks so much for asking them. I really enjoyed doing this. I'll do another one next week. I'll post the thread on Tuesday like I did this week. Thank you so much for participating. Have a great weekend. Enjoy Week 6. And can't wait for some football, guys. Thanks again, and have a great night.